for years, I felt like really alone in my journey. And it was something I was super silent about. I felt like I was the only woman that had hormone issues. I feel like I was the only woman that felt terrible on hormonal birth control. And I was going to all of these specialists. I was even traveling out of the state to go to specialists and trying to figure out like what is wrong with me.
Hello and welcome to the Soul at Career. My name is Marketa and I'm your host. I'm the person behind this channel, behind this podcast. At this point in my journey, I am a career coach, but I landed on this path through becoming a recruiter first. I was in recruitment for quite a few years for a variety of positions and levels of positions. And as much as people need certain skills to land a job, you really realize how the difference in attitude of people who came to get a job for survival and the people who are actually really trying to get fulfilled in their careers. After finishing my time as recruitment, this became my mission. I really want to help those people who have been through the survival period, right? They understand what it's like to just get that job, who just want to make sure that their family is going to survive. And sometimes they need to feed that ego a little bit, right? They have been on this path. But now they no longer want to just survive. They actually want to thrive. They understand that thriving career is going to help them with their fulfillment, and they no longer want a job. They actually want a real career. So I'm here for those of you who feel that way. If this is your cup of tea, please tune in, whether it is in this episode, in this video, or any other of my channel, and let's get in touch. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you, and I cannot wait for us to get to know each other a little bit closer. Hello and welcome to the Soul at Career. I'm your host Marketa and I have a great guest today here with us, Rachel Duda. Rachel is a hormone expert and a coach for women when it comes to giving them advice about their cycle, about how to balance their hormones and help them with their overall health. What else can you tell us, Rachel, about a little bit about who you are?
Oh my goodness. So many things. I just first have to say, like, what inspired this journey for me was my own health/hormone issues. And it was honestly just years and years of struggling. And after I started being open about this, I realized how many other people are also struggling with their hormones. So that's really just kind of what inspired my journey to get health coach certified, hormone coach certified, fertility awareness coach certified, and now I'm actually in the process of becoming functional diagnostic coach certified. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Amazing. You mentioned that finally something got you open to an idea like that. Do you remember what was that?
Honestly, I will say for years, I felt like really alone in my journey. And it was something I was super silent about. I felt like I was the only woman that had hormone issues. I feel like I was the only woman that felt terrible on hormonal birth control. And I was going to all of these specialists. I was even traveling out of the state to go to specialists and trying to figure out like what is wrong with me. And there kind of just came this time where I was just feeling so alone in it. And I started to share with first my friends, eventually on my Instagram. I already had a health Instagram. It wasn't focused on hormone health, but I just was feeling called to share it on my Instagram. And the more women that were like, oh my gosh, I have that, I feel like that, it just kind of like sparked that in me that I need to do this. I need to help women on this journey. And so, of course, that starts with healing myself. So as I started getting my certifications and actually feeling like, okay, I have the credentials to heal people because I healed myself and no one else could. No doctor I went to was able to really get to the root of why I was struggling. And yeah, it kind of was just like a natural progression, I would say.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even from what you say, like that you were not sharing that with anyone, I feel like so many of us have this in whatever is the topic, right? Whether it is a health condition, it could be mental condition, or just, what really, whatever it is that is inside of us that we feel like maybe we are too ashamed to share that, or it feels too vulnerable. Maybe the way how you were brought up, you are learned like, hey, tough up and just get over it. And I feel like often in, whether it was that from the conversations I had with my friends or from people like that on a podcast, often it is really our journey that inspires us to then help others. And it's almost feels like the most difficult part is to actually say something like that out loud.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's so much power in vulnerability, and we really have to be vulnerable to heal. So yeah.
So again, you're not my first guest here on this podcast that is about career. You're not my first guest that we are going to be discussing with health issue. So we decided today to talk about fertility and why it is important to think about it as women, even if maybe we do not, some of us maybe do not want to have kids. So what can you tell us, Rachel, about that?
Yeah, and that's so important because I think a lot of women, when they hear fertility awareness method, which is the method that I use and teach to prevent pregnancy, they hear the word fertility and they're like, oh, but I don't want to get pregnant, right? They're like, I'm not trying to get pregnant, so I don't want to use that method. We attach this word fertility to having babies. And yes, it is important to be fertile to have babies, but it's also really important to be fertile for our overall health. So whether or not you want babies, the goal should be to be as fertile as possible because it is connected to our longevity. So the more fertile we are, studies show that that does increase our lifespan. So it's really, really important to just have that awareness, first of all. I can go down so many directions with that. Of course, just hormonal birth control for one, obviously that is shutting down our reproductive system. We are not fertile. When we are on that, that affects not only our short-term, but our long-term health. Obviously, the lifestyle that we live is affecting our fertility because infertility rates are going up drastically. But one thing that I would really love to touch on a little bit for the women who are thinking about, maybe I do want kids, maybe it's soon, maybe it's in a year, maybe it's in 2 years, to really start thinking about their fertility to increase their chances of not only getting pregnant, but staying pregnant, and also knowing that they have the power, them and their partners are involved too. It's not, right? It takes two to tango. They have the power to influence their baby's genes. And that is just like the most mind-blowing thing to think about. Like we literally have the power to influence our child's genes through epigenetics. And I really just want to break down epigenetics a little bit because I think it just sounds like such a complicated word. Sounds really intimidating. But it really just reminds us that our genes are not our destiny. We are our destiny. We may be predisposed to certain things, but genes are like a light switch that can flip on and flip off, and they also have a dimmer. Okay, so we have the ability to dial that dimmer up and dial that dimmer down through diet, lifestyle, environment. So we want to dial down our genetic weaknesses and dial up our genetic strengths. We have the power to do that.
I would just right now, everyone like to pause and think about what you said. This was so huge. And it's crazy because when when we discovered each other and I was going through your profile, this was the part that I saw you talking about. And that's why I was like, no, this is what we need to discuss, because it's sometimes the timing is insane, because the same information was at the same moment coming to me from like 5 different sources. Literally the same day even. I'm like, what is going on? Like it felt so insane. And even like generally I'm really curious and constantly learning when it comes to anything about health. I just love to discover that. And it's been, I'm 29 now, and I think I started like educating myself on nutrition when I was like 13. Really like I was always just interested in that topic. And it was crazy. I read so many books when you see, like, for example, one of my favorite books on a similar topic like that, not on the hormones, just overall health, if you know, from Dr. Michael Greger, How Not to Die. Fantastic book. I love it. And he's talking about the causing, I think 12 leading causes of death and how you can prevent them. And if you think about all of them, they all then lead to the same solution, which is basically just healthy lifestyle, right? And whether it's going to be we're going to be talking about fertility, whether we're going to be talking about cancer, whatever disease of the body it is, it all comes back to you want to live healthy, right? So of course, then if you are infertile, that means that something is probably up with your body. And if something is up with your body, of course, it's going to influence your lifespan, right? As you were talking about it at the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also just keeping in mind too, that like it's estimated that only like 3% of people that are struggling to get pregnant are actually sterile. Most people that are experiencing problems with fertility are challenges that can be overcome and are temporary through diet, lifestyle, environment. I add on environment. We'll touch on that later, but yeah, those three things: diet, lifestyle, environment.
It's something that I find very interesting. A lot of people, whether it was family or just people that I know around me, there's something often that I seen people not wanting to be empowered to make a change, if that makes sense what I'm trying to say. Did you ever notice that maybe in your clients where people want to stay in the place of victimhood because they would need to make the change, whether it would be a lifestyle, whatever it would be? Did you notice that sometimes with people?
Yeah, well, change is hard and change is uncomfortable, right? Like change is really uncomfortable. I find myself uncomfortable when change happens myself. It's anytime we're out of like our normal or out of our routine, or we have to like change the way that we're doing something, it can be easy to push it aside and turn our head the other way. And I think a lot of people do that with health. But I also think that educating yourself on the why is just as important as the how, because that creates a lot of sense of empowerment, and it helps you to really understand like, okay, like, why am I actually going to do this, right? If someone told you, you need to drink water every day, and they never told you why, like, you're not going to be like that motivated to go and drink water and make that a priority, right? But when you learn, for example, you're wanting to have a baby and you're like, oh my goodness, like everything that I'm doing is going to affect my future child. That creates like a sense of empowerment that you have the ability to change your children's gene expression. Like that's crazy. So
insane, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you get more into the details of like exactly what epigenetics is for somebody who's really hearing the word for the first time ever?
Yeah. So kind of like I was explaining, it's just like how our genes are expressed. So it's really just like that dimmer, right? Like we're able to change how, if the gene is turned on or the gene is turned off. So during this like premester, which is a semester, we don't think about, we think about first, second, third, fourth when we're pregnant. With that pre-semester is when all of this is happening on both the male side and both the women's side. So what it is doing is changing, okay, so how are those genes going to be expressed? Are they going to be turned on? Are they going to be turned off? Are they going to have that dimmer? And so that when that sperm and that egg comes together, in that moment is when really your child's genetics are created. And yes, their life and their diet, their lifestyle, their environment is also going to influence those genes, but you're giving them like the best opportunity by supporting it in that premester. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. And so if we would go a little bit more practical, let's say for Optima Health, let's say that we are right now, we're only talking about the women because we cannot always influence our partners. But let's say as a woman, right, you just overall want to be healthy and fertile. What are some do's and don'ts that are maybe, or let's say the don'ts first at the beginning, that are kind of like if you see your client doing something, it's like a red flag and you're like, please stop this.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Where do we
Well,
start,
first off,
right?
yeah, it's really a loaded question for sure. But first of all, I always try to like, in a way, I stay away from the words like good, bad, don't do this, because I feel like for a lot of people and, just people in general, it feels really restrictive. And I know for myself, like I'm very like, I wouldn't say my day to day, I'm rebellious, but when someone tells me like, no, you can't have that, or like, no, you can't eat that, or, I want it more. And that's like a natural tendency a lot of us have, right? You're like, oh, I can't have that. Like, then I'm going to
Let
go
me
like
show
figure
you.
out. Yeah. So I really try to like create just make everything neutral, right? Like no food's good, no food's bad. Everything is neutral. But when it comes to things, I guess red flags, I like that term better of like, oh, okay, this is like affecting your health. I'll just start with like what I see a lot of my clients come to me with. Obviously, there's so many things, but for one, women who are exercising like crazy every single day, never giving their body a break. They're doing, marathons, they're doing HIIT training, they're doing CrossFit all the time, and they're not cycle syncing their workouts. Like that's a huge, huge thing that affects our hormone health. Women that are under eating, I can tell you, like, so many women are under eating. And I always say, like, you can never look at someone and tell if they're healthy or not. You can maybe be like carrying a few extra pounds, but be under eating because your metabolism is so unhealthy. And so that's a big one, I see too. And I'm not a fan of tracking calories, but if I do sense that a woman might be under eating a little bit, I sometimes recommend like maybe just a day or two, like let's get an idea of where you're at. And that way, if you can see on paper, because some of us need to see that data, right? Right in front of our face. Oh, whoa, I'm like eating like a toddler. Okay, I need to figure this out, right? If you're eating 1,200 calories, you're eating like a toddler. So yeah, I think that those are two big ones that I see with women.
And this is interesting because I feel like especially those two are often tied to, let's say, social conditioning, if I can say it this way. So I'm sure that often if you just tell them, yeah, probably it's not good to do that, that it might be difficult for them to overcome. Did you find that there is something that works? I guess in the moment when they actually really want to have a baby, that's a pretty good reason. But overall, if it would be just for balancing their hormones, right? Let's say the argument of having a baby is not valid in the moment because they're not trying to have a baby in that moment right now. But how do you explain them how much it is important to have a good menstrual cycle, for example?
Well, I always tell women that we need to look at our menstrual cycle as our overall report card of our health. We are really, as women, given this monthly report card. And a lot of times we look at our period and we're like, oh, that thing that's coming this month. Like, oh, great, I'm going to be on my period for this, right? But it really is this incredible way to get an assessment of our overall health. And a lot of women don't know that. And I will say too, like, women that come to me generally have some health issues. That's why they're coming to me, right? They're like, I have anxiety, I have cramps, I have heavy periods, I have insomnia before my period, I have hormonal headaches, whatever. it's affecting their health. And symptoms are always our body's way of telling us that we need support. Our body's like, hey, I am giving you this signal because I need help. It's trying to cry out for help. So most of the time, I don't think I really fully have to explain that, because women know, like, okay, I have a problem. But what I do explain is that, like, you have the power to not have these symptoms, because many women think they're destined to have those symptoms. Oh, my mom had bad cramps, so that's why I have bad cramps. Or we make up all these reasons. It's just part of being a woman. And the truth is, it's not. It's not part of being a woman. It's our body telling us it needs support. We all have the ability, for the most part. Obviously, some people have diagnosed conditions, it's a different story, but like, for the most part, we all have the ability to have PMS-free periods. And that's the truth.
I don't think I know anyone, no, one person in my life, like one woman in my life, who knows that to be true. It's so normalized, the fact that, and even the way how it's going to be talked about, right? Like, oh, is your PMS coming that you're in mood like that? Like, you know, all of these comments that you keep hearing your whole life, the fact that since like a lot of women, I think it's probably going, like, becoming younger and younger women who are getting periods nowadays. But let's say around 13 to 15, you're getting your first period, and it's becoming normal that you cannot do sport, that you need to sit, right? That you, all of these things that are, I feel are conditioning us. Then the fact of, like, you're not gonna be, let's say you're saying something that's not nice or whatever, like, oh, you're being hysterical, like, are you already on your period? All of these comments, how much do you find that it's influencing the women that you're then working with?
Well, I think it's a lot of, like, deconditioning that needs to happen. And really, my goal is to empower women through their menstrual cycle, and know that no matter where you are at in your cycle, because we have these 4 phases, which I'm sure we'll get into, no matter where you're at, no matter what phase you're in of your cycle, if you're right before your period, if you're on your period, you just finished your period, we have superpowers in every single phase. And understanding where you are at in each phase of your cycle is going to, again, empower you, but it's also going to show you, like, how can you best support yourself so that you can regulate your emotions a little bit better. Maybe you can even tell your partner, hey, like, I'm in my luteal phase, just letting you know, so they know I'm going to be a little more gentle with her, right? So just really understanding your body in this way, and looking at each phase and looking at their superpowers, goes a really long way. And I remember when I first found out about that, I was like, oh my gosh, when I first started cycle syncing, it was like the biggest game changer in my health, not only for my PMS, but also mainly for my mental health, I would say.
Yeah, I'm so much agree with you, because again, like, sometimes the self-talk can be so critical, right? Whether it is connected to social conditioning or just the fact that I definitely have to say that about myself. Like, when I first discovered those 4 phases, it felt like a permission slip, like a huge exhale that my soul wanted to take, really. Like, that's kind of like how it's coming to me, because I'm not sure if I'm gonna, because I realize that I've always studied this in Czech, so I'm not sure if I know the names of the phases, but basically the phase that comes like after your menstruation, if I do know the name correctly, is dynamic phase. I'm not sure. That's always the phase where I feel like that's who I am. And then suddenly, when there are those other phases, I feel like that's not me. Why am I like that? What's going on? And it was so interesting once I discovered those 4 phases, and I really had to learn what my superpower is in each of these phases. Suddenly it was like, oh, wow, no, I actually really, okay, I'm so happy that I used this superpower in that phase. Now we're in next phase. And you're realizing, maybe there's something into this. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation. Again, that's another reason, because we do live with ourselves 24/7. And we also go to work, most of us, right? And we have to tie all of these 4 phases into us being able to normally function in the workplace, because the workplace wasn't originally designed for a cycle of a woman. Let's get into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just want to, so the phase you are referring to is the follicular, just so everybody knows that's what we call it, as your follicle is developing. And it's interesting that you say, like, I feel most myself during follicular, because that is one of the phases that I would say like fits most into society.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of energy. We can go, go, go. We are able to just like get things done a lot of times in that follicular phase right after a period, as our estrogen is rising and we're like, woo, I feel good, right? It's almost like you just like, you wake up from a hibernation of menstrual cycle, you're ready to go again, right? We all know that feeling after our period. But yeah, I would love to dive into the phases a little bit more and just kind of relate them to productivity, because that's a huge aspect of work.
Yeah.
You gotta be productive.
Exactly. Let's start off with first saying generally, when would we start counting, right? Like when does the whole cycle start?
Okay, so great question. This is also a loaded question that I'm going to try to put in really simple terms, but to put simply, the first day of our cycle is the first day of our period. A lot of women I've found think that their period is actually the end of their cycle, but it's actually the beginning. So, really the only way to know what phase you are in is if you are tracking basal body temperature and cervical mucus through the fertility awareness method. That is the best way to know what phase you're in. You will know every day what phase you're in. You're going to know when your follicle's developing. You're going to know when you ovulated. You're going to know when your progesterone increased during your luteal phase. Obviously, we all know when we're bleeding. So that is going to be the best way. If you are someone who's like, I'm not really into tracking my cycle like that, but I still want to learn how to cycle sync, there's a lot of apps out there that can give you an idea of what phase you're in. So the MyFlow app. So this one is, are you familiar with that?
Not this one. Mm-mm.
Okay. So it's just my, and then flow is FLO. There's no W.
Okay.
That one's a really good one to just kind of get an idea. But another really important thing that I want to touch on too is that if you are on hormonal birth control, I am sad to say that you are not experiencing these phases. So you can't actually cycle sync. If you want to start getting familiar with cycle syncing, you can cycle sync with the moon cycles, but just know that your body is not actually experiencing these phases.
This is super interesting. So, in a sense, during the time when a woman is on a hormonal period, the the female part of the body has kind of like shut down.
When they're on hormonal birth control. So when you're on a hormonal birth control, actually the period that you experience, or I like to say the bleed you experience, is actually not a real period. It's called a withdrawal bleed. And the reason for that is because a true period is followed by ovulation. When you're on hormonal birth control, you do not ovulate. So the whole pill packet, just talk about hormonal birth control pill to make it simple. The whole pill packet is all synthetic. And so when you have those pills that release the bleed, it's not your body doing that, right? It's literally the pills stopping giving you hormones. And so your body's natural reaction is to shed. Yeah.
I would have so many questions on that, but I don't want to go too far from where we are in the topic. So let's see if I'm gonna manage to ask it at the end. But if I'm not gonna forget, I need to write it down. But let's continue with the cycle. Where are we now?
Okay. So, I would love to go over each phase of the cycle and just relate it to productivity. So if women are experiencing these phases, they can really understand how they can implement this into their day-to-day work. And I am telling you, like, cycle syncing in general sometimes really is about like less is more. I will tell you that, like, now that I cycle sync, I work out less, but I have gained so much more muscle. When it comes to productivity, it's that same philosophy as like our body sometimes just needs to slow down so that we can speed up at the right time. And cycle syncing overall will help you go about life more effortlessly. It is wild. So as women in our childbearing years, our brain chemistry actually changes as we transition into each phase. So as estrogen and progesterone levels are rising and falling throughout the cycle, our brain is changing in response. So we are actually primed for certain activities during certain phases. And each phase is very valuable, just in a different way. So of course, like, life happens, work happens. We can't always plan our life according to our cycle, right? We can't just tell our boss like, oh, I'm in my luteal, so I can't do that, right? I'm not going to do that for another week and a half. We can't really do that, right? But even the small changes make a huge difference. And a lot of times too, it's really just about the awareness. Having this awareness about yourself so you can give yourself grace, and you know what times of the month that you're like, oh, I'm going to do this because my brain is primed for it. So starting with the menstrual cycle, actually, I'd like to start with follicular. I feel like that's a good place to start with this. So follicular phase is going to be right after your period. This is when your estrogen is rising. So we kind of wake up from that little hibernation, right? We're like, okay, here we go. I am feeling more energetic again. I like to relate it to springtime. Everything's kind of just blossoming again. And our brain is really scheduled for, or it is really primed for scheduling, planning, and like setting intentions for the month. So it's a really great time to kind of look at your month ahead and be like, all right, what do I have going on for work or life, right? Do I need to schedule something? Does my dog need a grooming appointment? Do I need a whatever, schedule a dentist appointment? What does my work schedule look like? How am I going to make this really organized? I love in my follicular phase, looking at my calendar and like color coordinating and just like being like really like structured. Setting intentions. So looking at the month ahead and being like, what's my goals for this month? What do I want to accomplish? Things like that. And then as our estrogen continues to rise, we move into our ovulatory phase. And this is like the opening up phase. It is like summertime if we want to continue to relate it to seasons. So it's a really good time to network. If there's something at work and you're like, I need to talk to that person. I need to talk to my boss about that raise. And I've been so scared, right? Or I need to open myself up more to my coworkers. I want to try something new at work, or I want to present something and see if, they're willing to go with it. It's a really good time because we're really confident during our ovulatory phase. We're in our fertile phase. So biologically, our body's like, hey, look at me, I'm glowing, right? We're like trying to like attract our mate biologically. And studies even show that like we are more glowy, like our face structure even changes a little bit. Our skin looks healthier. It's really crazy. And that is because of the estrogen. Similar to when you get pregnant, right? Everyone says you're glowing, and it's because your estrogen is really high and like your hair is like silky and all of that. So kind of interesting. And then we move into our luteal phase. So this is going to be like fall because our hormones are falling. Our estrogen is falling a bit. Progesterone is taking over. And this is a really good time to kind of just like check things off your to-do list. So not the best time to like start a bunch of new projects, because you're going to hit that period and be like, oh, I did not finish those, right?
I cannot tell you how many times I've done that.
I know it's so I've done it I still do it myself sometimes. But again, it's about that awareness of, oh, okay, that's why I'm just gonna like take a minute and come back. So yeah, it's like a check things off your to-do list, get it done so that when you hit your period, you can have a little bit of a flocation. I like to call it flocation. So
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it.
yeah. And giving yourself permission to have that flocation. And that doesn't mean like don't show up to work, right? Or don't do anything, but doing things a lot more slowly. And also giving yourself a lot of time to rest, reflect, look at your month and be like, what went well? What didn't? What happened? Am I holding on to anything from this past month? Did something happen at work that I still can't get over? Let go of that. Like you're shedding your endometrium lining, but it's also a great time to like shed your emotions and like get that gunk out of your body so that you can start that next cycle really strong and feeling really, really good. And then the menstrual cycle is to finish off the seasons is the winter.
I really, really enjoy how you kind of like all tied it together holistically. Like I really, really like that. And now let's kind of revamp through it again. Or how would you? I'm thinking of like again bringing it to the workplace, right? Like especially because I already hear my clients, I already hear your clients basically, or generally women of like, yeah, it's cool, but I don't have my own business, or I am part of a team. And you already mentioned it, right? It's mostly about the awareness, but especially let's say if you would look at somebody who has very demanding job, right? We were talking before we started recording about nurses, about someone who is in a very hectic environment. How can they maybe put this awareness into practice, even in like small, even in small ways to make a little bit of a difference?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing is we want to focus on what we can control. And when I say that, like really take a moment and look at what you can control, because I can guarantee, and I know this from my clients, that there's a lot of things they experience in the workplace and they think they can't control it, but they can. They're eating their lunches at their computer, right? They're scrambling to eat their meal really quick when they actually have time to go outside and eat it or go on a quick walk. And maybe they go on a walk, but they're responding to emails at the same time and they're not allowing their body to like have that moment to like let go. And so really looking at like, what can I actually control? And I think it's also really important too to like be able to set up boundaries in our life in general, but also work boundaries. We do not need to be reactive all the time. We can be responsive, but we don't need to be reactive, right? Someone emails you, oh, I'm going to email back right now, right? Someone asks you a question, hey, can you give me a moment, right? We have the ability to set these boundaries. We all do, no matter what your job is. So really looking at like, what is it that I can control, or what is it that I can change in my work environment? And as far as cycle syncing, I think everyone can implement a little bit of cycle syncing, no matter what your job is. And again, like it doesn't mean like when you're in your menstrual phase, you do nothing. You're just doing it from a different energy. You're allowing your body to be like in a little bit more flow state, right? Maybe you like set the tone at work. Like I'm very much like a sense person. Like I love my essential oils going. I love like, to burn my sage and like just create this space. So like if you work from home, you're in your menstrual phase, like create that environment in in your office, right? That kind of allows you to slow down a little bit. Yeah, I think it's hard to give exact little tips unless I know like what is that person's job and what do they do, but those are kind of just the things that come to mind when you ask that question.
No, I really like that, because in a way, very often, well, most of the time, it actually all come back to awareness, right? First, awareness about all of the theory that you have just talked about, but also become fully aware about what your day-to-day is like. Because we can be talking about just overall health, right? Like, again, as we said at the beginning, it's all tied together. Like, do you get enough sleep? Do you eat enough? And all of this. And then, of course, because we all have our cycles, again, whether no matter even the gender, right? Even guys, they have their own cycles, and we have times when we are just feeling physically better than other time, etc., etc. It's all kind of like coming back to listening to your own body, and again, at the beginning, learning how to listen to your body to then be able to do so, because that's also not a norm. We know that, right? And really often, I love the fact that you said that you have more control than you think. That's just, it's such a key. I remember I was talking to a client where we were trying to, she was, her mind was constantly scattered, and she could not think of turning off the notifications for 15 minutes, because what if somebody needs her? And I'm like, we were first discussing 30 minutes. That was like insane. The idea of 30 minutes without notification was insane. For me, idea with 30 minutes of notification is insane. By the way, notifications is the best to not have them. I couldn't recommend it enough. But
I agree.
but then when we finally got to a place of like, okay, just try 15. 1 week later, when we had another coaching call, she told me like, oh, it's interesting, like 15, that was really great to have this focus session for 15 minutes. I'm thinking of like 15 almost felt like too short. Like maybe I don't know why you told me to do 15. I'm like, because you told me that you couldn't do any more than 15. And it's almost like you have an automatic idea of how things are, and you don't even question them. You don't think that they cannot be in any other way. And also, let's be honest, people don't need you as much as you think that they do. Like, they can survive without you if you go for holidays. They can survive if you don't respond for half an hour, right? I love the fact how you said that. It's like, I'm sorry to break it to you, you're not that important.
I was just gonna say that you're not that, and it's funny to say, right? And sometimes like I'll say that I'm like, what's my clients, I'm like, what's gonna happen if you don't respond? Like, is the whole business gonna fall apart? Like, it's like you kind of have to make a joke out of it and really realize like you're not that important. And also, just as you're talking about that, it's just reminding me like how many of us are addicted to stress. Like we're kind of addicted to this chaos.
Yeah,
Because
it again makes us feel important, right? You're busy, people need you.
yeah, people need me. Right. And then also just the distraction from what we don't want to actually think about. It is a form of distraction too, right? Chaos.
Yeah.
How many people can actually just sit in silence in their own mind? I think that would make that thought is a lot more crazy and scary for people than the thought of having all of this chaos of work.
Mm-hmm. That's
And I'm
huge.
speaking from myself because I used to be that person who, and I realized it when I lived alone for the first time. And I would come home and it would be quiet. And I would immediately like turn on the TV or turn on music. I was like, oh my God, I can't just be here in silence. It was terrifying. I'd rather have been in chaos. That was more comfortable.
So interesting. So personally, I'm introverted, and when I used to work in an agency as a recruiter, basically you're in this open space, right? There's constantly so many things coming on you. Everyone is constantly on a phone, right? Everyone's constantly selling something or someone. And I remember there was a time when I was like, there's no way I can have any roommates or flatmates because I'm just constantly feeling so overwhelmed. And I remember it was just freshly after I moved in. It's so funny. I've just had this realization as you said that. Because at that moment, the only thing I had in my apartment was a mattress on a floor. And I remember from that day, I came back from work where, again, constantly coming something at you. And I just sat down. And even in the quietness, it was difficult to hear the quietness. Like I felt like, all the stuff is still coming. But it was then finally when I managed to ground myself, it was just so beautiful. And I realized how much I needed just to normally function, right? But if you are so afraid of it, that you cannot be in such silence, and if like it's so difficult to then listen to your body, right, coming back to it and understanding what your body needs, because you're kind of just like the hamster in that wheel, and you constantly keep doing the same stuff, not questioning, because the hamster would feel probably if I'm gonna start running, I'm gonna fall of fall of the wheel.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that you connected that. It's so true. We are so disconnected from our bodies because we spend so much time in our head and in chaos.
I'm thinking now, let's say that you are a manager of a team where you have male and female colleagues, right? How do you, because I feel like a lot of people, and as women especially, they will think of like, no, I need to be responding a certain way at work because this colleague is doing it this way. And then I'm going to be seen like I'm not doing enough work and I'm going to be fired. And there's so many fears, of course, that constantly is coming up. How do you think that in that moment it's good to, or how would you work with a client like that who, it's actually two questions I have about that. So let's say first you are the woman within the team. And how would you help her understand at the beginning to take the leap of faith, because it is at the beginning, right? Before you fully discover all of your superpowers within the cycle, to try to get off that hamster wheel and try the stuff a little bit differently.
Yeah. I would say for women, a lot of women are kind of scared of their feminine energy because we look at our feminine energy as like not as productive, right? Because the masculine is like the structure, it's the go, 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 it's the get things done. And then the feminine is more like flowy. Let's take a moment to reflect, right? We're like using the two hemispheres of our brain and connecting them, and we're making these realizations. And yeah, maybe it's not as go, 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 but we are able to see things from a completely different lens. And that is something I think is lacking in the workplace. And so just remembering that we need to tap into our feminine energy, not only for our own health, but knowing that like this is going to benefit your workplace. And both men and women, we need these feminine and these masculine energies. It's going to allow your company or your team to see things from a different lens. It's going to allow the men to maybe tap into their feminine a little bit. It's going to just create this, I want to say energy, but I'm trying to figure out like, I can't think of the word I'm trying to use, but just knowing that it's needed. It's needed in our world and it's needed in the workplace. And not tying your success to the go, go, go. Because I think that's another reason we're addicted to that chaos, is because we think the more things we check off the list, the more productive we are. But what if you were that person and you're in feminine energy and you came up with this like crazy idea that changes the whole dynamic of your team, your business? Like that's really powerful. And how do you get there is by being in your feminine, creative, flowy state, taking a step back, seeing the whole picture, which a lot of people don't give their mind the time and space to do.
I love that. I love that because I feel like sometimes it's good and very important to understand the health aspect of it, but then I feel like unfortunately so many women, they don't feel worthy enough even sometimes to be healthy, right? That it could even be their subconscious to think about it in this way. And plus, so those who have people pleasing tendencies, they will think of like, no, I need to be like the man in the workspace because it's designed for them, and I just need to be kind of like not showing that I have emotion, because then they would think this and this and that. And it's so beautiful when you manage to embrace the all sides of you. And in a way, I feel the correlation between you embracing all parts of you as the workplace embracing generally diversity, right? Whether it's going to be male and female colleagues or male and female energy and people of different backgrounds, and understanding that all of this is enriching us, right? That even what I wanted to actually, originally the question I wanted to ask was that, let's say that you are the manager of the diverse team of, let's say you have a lot of males and you have their other females, and you, let's say, are aware of the cycle and so on. But of course, you're not going to be asking them when is your period, so tell me what cycle you're in, but also just giving them the space to be able to express themselves when they want to, and to be able to work on other types of projects because they tell you that right now I don't want to say I'm feeling to do this, but you know what I mean, kind of like I feel like right now I am stronger in expressing this type of skills and using these types of skill. It's kind of like if we give each other the space to be really just to be able to express ourselves, I find it very beautiful, those type of managers who do that. And I also feel like it takes a lot of strength and faith from that their side to be able to do that, because often I feel like the results that are going to be produced by that team, let's say, are going to be so much more impactful, but they might take a faith at the beginning and they might take a little bit longer to be shown.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as a manager, and of course, this is very much me, like, all right, trying to put myself in this position because I've never been in this position. But I think like just workplace culture in general is so incredibly important. And I will say, like, when I worked for WebMD for a little bit, and they had the most incredible workplace culture. My manager was very much like you were saying, very open to like any of our ideas. And it's not to say that anything we wanted to do, she was like, yeah, sure, do it, right? She would still question, but she was so open. And that was the key. She was very much wanted to see and hear our thoughts, our ideas, and then figure out like, is this going to work or not? But she never told us like, oh, you know, you have to continue. She never made us feel like you have to just do what you're told to do or whatever. So I think just like as a manager, making people feel like they have the space to do that and express that. And I mean, when people enjoy what they're doing and they feel heard and they feel seen, they're going to do better at their job in general, right? They're going to stay at the company longer. They're going to feel like they fit in. And so I think just as we talked about earlier, we spend so much time at work, and it's just so important for people, and also from a company perspective, that people genuinely enjoy where they're at and they feel like they aren't, as women, like they aren't fighting they don't always have to fight their biological cues in the workplace. Like they're still seen and they're still heard. And you know, I'm a huge fan too of just like mental health days. I think that's so cool that like companies have mental health days, and maybe you need that during a certain time of your cycle. Use a little mental health day just to reset. And then when you come back to work, it doesn't mean like you're super behind. No, it means like you're ready to show up. Even
I love that.
You give yourself that space.
Mm.
So I don't know. That was a long-winded answer, but I think again, just for me, in a way a little difficult to put myself totally in that position, but I can just speak from my experience at WebMD and just what I enjoyed. And yeah.
I mean, of course, we cannot speak for the experience of the manager position in a certain company, but we can still speak from experience of what we would like to be delivered, and just generally like a human to human connection. Because I don't understand why there's still a lot of people, and I have to say, I feel like it's a lot in the North American culture. We here in Europe, we have a little bit different approach to it, but still a lot of companies also have a similar approach, where it's kind of like you need to almost switch off your human side when you're at work. Like, who came up with that? Like, you cannot express the fact that you're human. And of course, I'm not saying it in a sense of, oh, I'm human, I'm angry, so I'm gonna scream at you just because I'm feeling it. No, no, no. You still need to regulate yourself and understanding that you're impacting other people. But that's actually the part that I'm talking about, right? The action of the company is impacting the people, and the people are not disposable. Just because they don't work at a company doesn't mean that, they were being disposed. And even, I know that we would be going into a completely different topic. We would be talking about burnout and all of this, again, even though it's so connected to health. But people take years to heal from whatever health condition it is sometimes. And it would be so beautiful if more companies finally understood the fact that happy and healthy people are more productive and are actually bringing you more money, and they have less tendency to leave, so you can spend less money on recruiting more people. It's such an easy concept, simple concept to understand, yet a lot of companies still do not want to accept it. So I'm kind of hoping if someone who has any power in the company is listening right now, they're gonna take it too hard.
Yeah. It's so true. And that's literally what I did at WebMD. Is I was a health coordinator, and I'd go into different businesses and help them implement things so that they can be healthier in the workplace. And it's really powerful. Yeah.
I would love to just talk about the one last thing, and in a way kind of like connect it all together, right? The fact of, we are in a workplace, and then we discussed at the beginning the fertility part of it. How can a toxic workplace, whether it would be a mentally toxic or actually toxic when it comes to the environment of where we're working, how can that influence the fertility, the longevity, and actually even the epigenetics? Let's kind of like tie this whole conversation together.
Okay, so when we're looking at fertility, when we're looking at hormones, the first thing that I tell my clients is, all right, you thought you were here to work on your reproductive health, but we're actually looking at the whole body. We are taking a holistic approach, because at the end of the day, our hormones are just our chemical messengers. They are telling us that something is off in the body. Head to toe, we're looking at, right? And so when we are looking at the workplace and we're looking at all of these things that affect us for 8 hours a day, sometimes more for some people, there's some things we have control over, there's some things we don't. And so again, just tying it back to like, let's look at what you have control over and what you don't. You don't have control over creating enough time during your workday to let go and take a break. Okay, how can you create a solid morning routine that sets you up for the day mentally? So just kind of looking at these things of what can I implement and what is realistic and what is doable. And then you wanted me to tie into just like the fertility.
Yeah. As we were talking about the environmental toxins and how those can influence your health and your epigenetics and the health of your future children if you decide to have some.
Yeah, and this is a big thing. Our environmental toxins are At least definitely in the US, like the man-made chemicals are increasing every single year. And so what is that doing to our bodies? So many things. For one, it's burdening the liver. It's making our body have to work in overdrive to detox. And it's literally changing our genetic expression. It's making it harder to flush out excess hormones. And whether or not we work in a toxic workplace, and I'll talk about what some toxic workplaces are, and I'm talking about environmental toxins, not, that can mean two different things, toxic workplace, but we're all exposed to them. The average woman is exposed to about 168 chemicals before they even leave the house. And that comes down to their, hair stuff, their makeup, their perfumes, their lotions, their cleaning supplies. So we really need to be looking at all of this stuff because it affects our body greatly. As far as certain jobs that have high toxic exposure, and I'm not naming all of them, these are just the ones that come to mind, are welders, miners, construction workers, painters, house cleaners using things like bleach, people who spray chemicals for like agriculture. And I understand like we need these people in our world, but if you or your husband or your partner, your future baby daddy, if they are in one of these careers, just know it's extra important for them to pay attention to how they're supporting detox and elimination as much as they can, because it will affect their fertility, it will affect epigenetics, and it will affect, therefore, their longevity.
Such a huge topic. Like, let's say, to put it a little bit into practical terms, okay, we're gonna start having a look at our cosmetics. So then food that we consume, the chemicals around in the house. And again, this is just what we're talking about, like in our everyday life at home. Is there some kind of like simple way, maybe, I don't know, even a certain website where we can find what is in our products, all of these kind of things, to be able to go at least through the first phase of being able to understand what is where?
Totally. Yeah. So there is a website. It's org.com. But if you just look up EWG, you will find it. And then there's a whole database where you can plug in tons of different products, and it's going to give you a score 1 to 10 how toxic it is. So I would start there. I would also, keep in mind too, like this is going to take time. You should not just like freak out and throw out all your stuff and start new. You spent money on it. It's fine. It took me a very, very long time to finally go all clean, because I personally am not a cold turkey type of gal. Like if I do something, it's generally slow. So it took me, I would say like 1.5 years or so to like find the hair stuff I really loved, to find the makeup that I loved, to find cleaning supplies, to really go through all of this and finish the bottles and all of that. But really look at, first off, what are you using the most? What are you putting on your body the most? Okay, I'm assuming you're, washing your hair quite often, right? If you're putting on lotion every day, look at that lotion. That's one of the first things you look at if you're putting it on your body every day. So yeah, and just slowly start paying attention to what is toxic in your households. I think it's a great idea to maybe go on the website and just kind of look at all your stuff, from like your laundry detergent to your makeups to your hair things, and then kind of score them and bring into your awareness which ones are the most toxic, which ones do I need to switch out. And then just little by little, when that bottle is gone, you already know, oh, I'm not going to buy that same one again because I already saw it was toxic. So I'm going to switch to a different one or whatever. Yeah, take it slow with that stuff.
And when you were mentioning, let's say that there is actually somebody listening working in one of those toxic environments, you were talking about supporting the liver. Is there something specific, maybe some kind of advice that you could give to those people to keep detoxing?
Yeah, so so many things. I will just kind of spit out some things on the top of my mind that are great for supporting the liver. Of course, eating whole foods, mainly trying to stick to organic because we do want to stay away from, even more toxic burden from some conventional. We want to stay away from like fried foods, seed oils, limiting alcohol and caffeine, increasing your veggies, specifically cruciferous vegetables, um, getting in like saunas or like Epsom salt baths to help your body detox and sweat, or infrared, or like ozone therapy. You want to take it a step further, doing things like coffee enemas. I also love castor oil packs. Those are great too. Um, yeah, just even like lemon water. I'm not sure if I already said that one, but that's a great way to support your liver too. There's so many things, and everything everything's a cycle too. I can really go down a rabbit hole with with the liver, but I think that some of those things would be a great starting point. And comes down to focusing on what you can control once again, right? You're not going to just quit your job because you're exposed to environmental toxins, but what you can do is implement some things to help flush those out.
And just in case you would quit a job, don't forget I'm a career coach and I can help you find a new one. Shameless plug.
Yeah, it's an option too. You just quit your job.
And right after, go visit Rachel on her website. No, you know what? Actually, this is like such a great way to get to it. If somebody would like to get their health supported and would like you to help them, where can they find you?
So they can find me at High on Healthy on Instagram. And yeah, I currently run a group program for women who are either off hormonal birth control or wanting to switch off hormonal birth control, learn the fertility awareness method to effectively manage their fertility. This method is extremely effective. It's 98 to 99% effective with typical use. Keeping in mind, birth control pill is 93 with typical use. But at the end of the day, it's user dependent. So if you are planning on switching to natural birth control, you really do want to learn from a certified educator. And in the group program, I also help women, go through some of the things we talked about today, understand environmental toxins on a deeper level, how to switch out their products. We talk about balancing your hormones naturally, all the foundational components, and how you can really utilize these foundational tools, not only to prevent PMS, but also just for your overall health, increasing your fertility, again, whether or not you want babies, and therefore just increasing your longevity.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate you coming on.
I had so much fun.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for that. And everybody go and follow Rachel. She is just delivering so many great messages out there on Instagram. You gotta go watch that. Thank you.